Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a night of spine-tingling terror. Tonight, we journey deep into the heart of the wilderness to share some of the most horrifying tales ever told. Prepare yourself for a night of fear and suspense as we uncover the dark secrets lurking in the shadows. So pitch your tents, gather close, and let the nightmares begin.
To preface this story, I had never heard of the Plaid Man before this happened to me. I'm not sure if this was a ghost or that specific if there is one, but for the story's sake, that's what I'll call him. Apparently there are people all over the place seeing a man in plaid entity. I'm not sure what this is. Is it one entity or multiple different ghosts who happen to be wearing a plaid shirt? Who knows? All I know is that this happened to me. We had just adopted our dog Odin from the pound the day before. I was standing in the living room facing the TV with the dog in front of me in a sitting position. I was test driving him, if you will, seeing if he knew any tricks. He did, but I digress. So I notice my dog looks to my left towards the bedroom door. My bedroom was about 7 to 10 steps behind me. I immediately, without thinking, followed his eyes and turned around to my left. As I'm turning, I see as plain as my hand in front of my face a man in a red and black plaid shirt with the sleeves cut off. I see his cheek from the back of his head along with his ear, his left shoulder from his sternum to his shoulder, and his entire Caucasian arm and hand. It happened so fast though. As I turned, I watched him slide behind the door like he was hiding from me. What? This man/entity/ghost thing was in full color, and as solid as you or I. When I tell you I was frozen in terror, that is an understatement. I thought someone got into this apartment. I'm a small woman alone with a dog I just met. I don't know if this dog was going to help me. Hell, I didn't know if he would bite me, let alone protect me. I had just met the good boy. So I'm petrified, and a million scenarios fill my mind. But I couldn't move. My legs literally lock up. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Finally, I said a rather timid, "Hello?" After another minute of listening to my heart drum, I said hello again. Then I slowly and reluctantly walked over to the bedroom door. I thought for sure I was about to get chopped up, abused, and probably have my life taken from me, in that order. Then, there was no one there. This scared me even more. I never thought to keep watching the dog to see his reaction or what he did afterwards, because I was just so afraid. Now I wish I would have paid more attention to him, but I couldn't at the time. I stood in the same position and turned around fast, trying to recreate it, thinking I had just imagined things. But no, my dog saw it too. But I was gaslighting the hell out of myself for a while. It took me hours to calm down, and I'm just glad it was a phantom. Has anyone else seen this guy? Back in the early 2000s, my friend and I were into ghost hunting for a few months. We would search out and go to the most haunted places we could find around our area. We went to many places, but only one yielded something that still creeps me out to this day. I'll start off by telling you how this house is haunted. This house was in Chino, California, now demolished, and in Chino there's also a men's prison. Back in the 80s, I believe, this guy escaped prison and found a home to hide out in. Back in the day, this was a rural community with mostly cows, houses few and far between, and the house he broke into had a family living inside. Mother, father, and 2 kids, a boy and a girl. He took the life of the boy and the girl in front of their parents, and then took their lives for good measure. He stayed there for a week or 2 before he left or got caught, I don't remember which. Fast forward to our ghost hunting trip. We eventually pull up to this house, of course in the middle of the night because why not? The house, even though this was years later, was still there all fenced up, boarded up windows and crime scene tape with signs saying "keep out," and graffiti all over the house. Typical. My friends and I found our way through the fence and into the backyard area where a window had already had the boards removed and the window busted out. A few of us had self-defense tools in case we ran into unsavory people and a camera to take pictures. There were 5 of us. We went through the broken window one by one and waited for each other until we were all through. The inside of the house was completely empty, except for smashed family pictures still on the walls, and graffiti also adorned the inside of the house. The most creepy things were written on the walls and ceiling, like, "Death is here, do not enter." The window we went through led us right to the middle of the living room, and right behind that was a kitchen. All the pantry doors were open, and as we walked through the house, we all formed a sort of conga line with me in the back. We walked around the living room first and then the kitchen. The entire time my buddy is taking random snapshots with his camera. The same camera we have been using for all our different haunted locations, mind you. As the lead person goes into the hallway, we stop and look into the hallway closet to confirm a part of the story. The escaped prisoner had gruesomely sliced at the little boy's throat in an attempt to end his life. Little did he know that the boy crawled into the hall closet and held it, keeping it from bleeding out while he watched the rest of his family lose their life. When I opened that closet door, I would say about 70% of that carpet on the floor was soaked with ancient blood. It was definitely true. We continued along the hallway and every room had a very creepy and eerie message that left my skin crawling. We finally made it to the master bedroom where the parents were tied up and made to watch the fate of their children. Again, the carpet had old blood spattered all over it, and the entire room just had this overall sense of darkness to it, like a cold pressure. It was off-putting to say the least. As you entered that room, there was a light switch to the right of the wall. Right next to it was the creepiest message of them all. It gave me the tingles. I don't remember exactly what it said, but something like that. Do not lock anyone alone in this room. Do not do it. This is not a joke. Please don't. Needless to say, that creeped us all out. It didn't take us too long to explore the entire house. It wasn't that big. And as we made our way out, I was still in the back of the line, and my buddy with the camera was taking the occasional photo. In the middle of the night, it's still cold and pitch black in this house except for the one flashlight we remembered to bring. Then just as we were leaving the hallway, I heard a little girl moan clear as day. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and again gave me that tingly feeling. I specifically remember this next part. I remember I was going to ask the person in front of me if they'd heard the little girl, but then I didn't say anything, because I didn't want to influence their answer, so I just asked, "Did you hear something?" The person in front of me turned their head, eyes wide, and said, "I just heard a little girl." We both stood there in disbelief. There were no other houses around. This place was on acres of farmland, and we were the only ones in the house. It scared us half to death. I don't know how to explain it, but it sounded sad, like with anguish, and came from a deep, dark place. We ran out that place so fast, one of my friends got cut on the windowsill. The biggest dude in our group, who was about 6'2", couldn't make it back to the car because he was so terrified he couldn't move his legs. He was on the floor outside, bawling his eyes out. He was saying things like, "The devil's in that house." One of the girls that was with us had to take him by the hand and comfort him before we could get up and get to the car. That was our last expedition to anywhere haunted. A few days later, my buddy uploaded these photos to his computer, and as we went through them, we noticed all the pictures before and after the house were perfectly fine and clear, but the ones from the Cooper house were filled with orbs. It's the craziest thing to see. I wish I had them, but it wasn't my camera, and this was way before smartphones. 15 years or so later, I randomly see a newspaper article on my mum's dinner table. I see off the side right of the front page that the escaped convict was finally being put to death, decades after everything happened. I thought it was weird how that came full circle. I never see newspapers anymore, but there it was. And from what I understand, the young boy whose throat was slit ended up in a mental institution for the rest of his life, and it still gives me tingles to this day just thinking about it. I'm from India, and about 4 to 6 years ago something truly unsettling happened to me. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up for no apparent reason. The night was silent, and then I heard the sound of someone running past my home, their leg bangles jingling with every step. The sound wasn't faint, it was vivid, as if they were right outside. Just a few moments later I heard it again, as though they had turned around and come back the same way. This strange occurrence didn't happen just once, but for an entire week. Every night, at exactly 2 a.m., I would wake up to hear the same sound. It was always the same pattern, running footsteps accompanied by the distinct jangle of the bangles, first passing my house, then returning moments later. And every time, I would be frozen under my sheets, paralyzed with fear. I wouldn't dare move an inch, afraid of what might happen if I did. I eventually told my parents about this, hoping they may have an explanation or take it seriously. But they dismissed my concerns, brushing it off as my imagination. I felt helpless and unsure of what to do. That weekend, however, something unexpected happened. My aunt visited and casually mentioned to my mum that she'd been hearing the same thing, the sound of someone running with bangles jingling in the middle of the night. Hearing this sent chills down my spine. I wasn't the only one experiencing it. Then I remembered something that happened a few months prior. A newly married woman who lived next door had tragically taken her own life. From what we heard, it was due to the abuse and torment she faced at the hands of her mother-in-law. Before her passing, my parents would warn me to avoid standing near or entering her house, as they believed she practiced witchcraft or something similar, though they never elaborated much. At the time I didn't think much of their warnings, but after connecting the dots, I began to wonder if her spirit was the one responsible for these strange occurrences. I find myself seated on my front porch, having a cigarette, and unable to summon the courage to re-enter my own home. The reason is deeply unsettling. I believe there is someone or something inside. You see, a little over 2 months ago, I moved into this house. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for a new beginning, a new place where I could settle into a quiet life. The first few weeks passed without incident, and I gradually grew comfortable in my new surroundings. However, recent events have made me question the safety of my own space, and perhaps even my sanity. It all began one evening not long ago. I was laying in bed, casually browsing on the web on my phone, with no thought of anything unusual. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something, a slight movement in the direction of my walk-in closet. I turned my head instinctively, and what I saw chilled me to my core. Standing inside my dressing room was a human-shaped figure. It wasn't a vague shadow or a trick of the light. I distinctly saw the outline of a person, arms, legs, a head, standing still and facing me. Their form was unmistakably humanoid, and they were looking right at me. In that instant, I was overcome with sheer panic. My heart raced. My body reacted before my mind could fully process what was happening, and I threw myself out of bed, ran out the room, and slammed the door shut behind me. Adrenaline surged through me as I dashed into the kitchen, grabbing the largest knife I could find. I was terrified, but I wasn't going to sit idly by. I shouted, my voice trembling with fear and anger. I threatened to call the police, warned whoever was inside that I was armed, and demanded they show themselves. Yet despite my frantic yelling, there was no response. Silence filled the house, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. After a minute or so, I realized in my rush I had left my phone behind in the bedroom. I needed to call 911, but going back seemed like the last thing I wanted to do. Slowly, cautiously, I crept back into the bedroom, knife in hand. I cracked open the door just enough to peek inside. My heart pounded in my ears as I scanned the room and looked towards the closet. But there was nothing. The room was empty, and so was the dressing area. It was as if the figure had never been there at all. But I know what I saw. It wasn't a fleeting glance or a vague shadow in the dark. There was someone or something standing in my closet, looking right at me. It was a clear, defined form, but now it had vanished without a trace. I was left standing there holding a knife, torn between disbelief and lingering terror. After calming myself down, I cautiously returned to the house. I had no other choice. Since that night, I've tried to rationalize what happened, but nothing made sense. Following the advice of a few people I shared the story with, I decided to confront the issue directly. Feeling ridiculous, I stood in front of the closet and spoke loudly and firmly to the empty space. I commanded whatever entity or presence might be there to leave. I don't know if I expected a response, but none came. Still, I felt slightly more at ease, though far from reassured. Not long after this, I uncovered some information that only heightened my unease. I learnt that the previous owners of this house had tragically taken their own life. I was unable to find out much more, whether they had perished inside the house or they were male or female. But knowing this sent a chill through me. Was there a connection between their passing and the figure I had seen? I couldn't be sure, but the knowledge hasn't helped me feel any safer. As of now, nothing else has happened, but I still remain on edge, waiting for something to occur. I've heard nothing, but the memory of that night lingers in my mind like a shadow I can't shake. Should anything happen again, I'll make sure to let you all know. But for now, all I can do is wait and hope that whatever it was is gone for good. This happened a few years ago. I would have been around 19 at the time and living with my best friend / roommate, who, for as long as I can remember, has had a ghost following her. Now, hear me out. It has messed with me in the past, but never anything like this. Just doing stuff to scare me, but that's another story. So one night we decide to get drunk and watch ghost movies. About halfway through our second, we got the bright idea to start antagonizing her ghost. Super smart, I know. And we start saying all kinds of silly stuff like, I bet you don't have the ghost balls to do this. I bet you aren't even real. After the movies, we go to bed and forget about that until the next night. It's 11 p.m. and she's at work and I'm home. She has an 150-pound Anatolian shepherd, and I hear him freak out, full-on terrified, screaming. I rush out of my room to see him pinned between the open laundry room doors and her metal bar chains. I start freaking out, trying to figure out how he got stuck, because I know for a fact I closed the door after I was done, because if I didn't, our cats would get stuck behind the washer, and he never messed with the chairs. After I get him unstuck, he starts growling at the corner of the dining room, teeth bared, hackles raised, and he pushes me down the hallway away from the room. He won't let me pass him, but I have to go check the doors to make sure they're locked, so I put him in my room at the end of the hallway, which he wasn't happy about, and go to check the doors, and sure enough, they're all locked with the deadbolts in place. As I'm walking back to my room, I get a notification on my phone from our Ring camera, telling me there's someone at the door. I open the app but don't see anyone. I only hear clicking like someone is tapping on the microphone. I look out the window and don't see anyone, and when I walk away I get another notification and hear tapping noises. This happens multiple times and I'm just standing there staring at my phone, wondering what's going on. And then it clicks. It has to be the ghost. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do, because how do you protect yourself from a pissed off and antagonized phantom? At this point I'm terrified. I'm home alone with her still in training, guard dog, and can't get a hold of her because she can't have her phone on while at work and won't be home long after 2 a.m. So I rush back to my room and hide with her dog until she got home. After she did, I'm feeling pretty shaken, so I invite her to go over to the room so that we can chat, as I didn't want to be anywhere near the dining room and kitchen area. Her alarm clock is thrown from the other side of the window directly at her feet when we get to her room. She looks at me like WTF, so instead we go to my room and I tell her everything that happened. She ended up staying in my room that night, although I didn't get much sleep, because I 100% believed it would invade my dreams. The next day we did a cleansing and heavily apologized. On Friday the 21st of June, my great-grandmother passed away at the age of 81 from Alzheimer's. The following Thursday, 27th, we held her funeral at her church. She was a devoted Catholic. I am not. After the service, we walked to the cemetery for her burial. While we were walking back to the church, I asked my mum if we knew anyone else buried there. She listed a few names. As we continued walking, my sister-in-law and I ended up next to an older lady, maybe in her late 70s or early 80s. She asked if I was one of my grandma's grandchildren, and I explained that I was actually her great-grandchild. She then told me she was my grandma's cousin. She didn't share her name, but we spoke about how big the family was and how I hadn't met some of the people at the funeral. Later, I told my mum about the conversation. She seemed confused and said my gram didn't have any cousins. She had one brother who never had kids and a sister who passed away years ago without children. There was also no extended family from that side. I suggested perhaps it was a distant cousin, but she said if that were the case, they'd be much older. I told her I'd point to the lady if I saw her again. At the wake held at the local club, I pointed her out to my mum. Strangely, my mum said she couldn't see who I was talking about. My sister-in-law saw her though. The lady was short, about shoulder height, and I'm 5'5", and wore a blue patterned shirt, a black cardigan and black pants and shoes, with grey hair and glasses. My mum insisted she couldn't see anyone matching that description. I went to ask my nan, my great-grandma's daughter, if she knew who the lady might be. She said she didn't see anyone either. When I asked if my gran had cousins, she said not that she knew of, though it might be possible there were distant ones that she wasn't aware of. A few minutes later, I realized the lady had disappeared. My sister-in-law and I didn't see her again until we were leaving. As we walked out, my sister-in-law spotted her again, but as I looked, the lady went behind a wall. We waited for her to reappear from the other side, but she never did. Confused, we drove past the wall to see if she had gone somewhere else, but there was nowhere else to go. My sister-in-law and I looked at each other and just burst out laughing. It was such a surreal moment. I don't really know how to end this, but it was one of the most strangest experiences I've ever had. I grew up in a lovely home in a small town in the very south of Washington state, near the Columbia River Gorge. Well, lovely is in the look of it.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed tonight's spine-chilling camping tales. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to bring you more heart-pounding horror stories soon. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, keep the campfire burning and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe the channel.